Welcome back, everyone, to Paranormal Roundtable. This is part 2 of the Lura Ketchledge discussion, talking about NDEs and out-of-body experiences and many other things. And so let's get right to it. Let me ask you a question, okay? Now, I have a couple friends of mine. One in particular, his name is, we call him Scorpion. He had a head injury when he was a teenager, and I'm actually trying to get him to come on. He's here. He's in the back. I'm trying to get him to come on. He goes to a place that I call the City of Night. Now, I don't know if anybody out there has ever heard of this, and some of these people listening to me right now are going to be like, wow, Wolf's turned the corner. He's crazy. No, seriously, there is a place that we call the City of Night, and we call it that. My wife has actually claimed to have been to this place. It's like a dark world. It's always dark. Now, that is the place where I recently, not too long ago, I ran into my friend who, like you were saying, you rescued. That's how you termed it. That's kind of how I felt like it. Like I helped him find a light out of that room to get out of where he was at. And so there is a place that is it's always dark, in that place. It is on the other side. And when I last saw my friend there in the dream state that I was in, he actually has a job. Like he's living a job. Like he has, it's really bizarre to try to explain it to people who've never heard of it. Now I have a friend named Arash who's actually, I've covered a couple of his encounters he had with this creature we call the Dog Man. Now, he and me have talked about this City of Night because he claims to have been there too. And you go there in your dream state. Now, I wanted so I wanted to know if you had heard anything about that. And now I got my friend, he's about to come on. And what I got Scorpion here, right? And he's been on the show before. We lived, he was a roommate of ours that lived in this house that was very haunted a long time ago. Scorpion, the reason I wanted you to come on is because we were talking about the City of Night.
Yeah, I know that place.
Okay. Now, what I told the audience so far is that you had a head injury. Yeah. You were Scorp comes from a very bad neighborhood, folks, and when he hung around with bad people when he was a young guy, I guess you were a gang, street gang.
Yeah.
And he got into a fight and some guys put his head into a brick wall. That's what happened, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and so yeah, so he lost what he thought. He lost the ability to dream. Well, over the years, he quit dreaming. Like he didn't have dreams like we do, folks. Like he didn't remember dreams or he thought he didn't have dreams. But everybody dreams. It just means you don't remember it. But one of the things that he did tell me was that he remembers going to a place that was it was always dark.
Yeah.
When he finally was able to begin to dream, he started to realize that he was actually going to this place. I actually found him. Now that's going to sound weird to people, okay? But we're not making this up.
No, that's not weird.
Yeah, I mean, to the average person who maybe is just tuning in and they listen to me talk about cryptids and ghosts and things, this might be a little far-fetched for you to believe, but that's why I got you, Lura, who understand this, and you, Scorp, who've actually experienced this.
Yeah.
Now, I had the situation that happened with my old friend, and that was very strange, and I ran into him in that city. I've been to this place many times. Now it's not just a city. There's countryside too, but there's this city that's there that's huge, like a metropolis, I guess you can call it, and it's always dark. And there are sentinels there. There are like people who kind of patrol the area, and they keep people there.
Sounds like you're talking about the way they describe in that Netflix series Stranger Things, the upside down, which is the other side.
That's kind of how my wife described what happened to her, was kind of like that. But for me, I didn't really, it is kind of like the reverse negative or whatever.
Yes.
But it's just like, to me, it's just like a city. It's always dark. And
dark,
I've been to some of the same places. Like there's bars there, and this is going to sound weird. They're trying to live like they did on this side.
Oh, yeah.
But that's not really, it's almost like an imitation of it. Now, eventually further down the line, we can get into some stuff like with what happened to Anthony, where we had some problems, and Tony's mother, who is Buddhist, she actually helped remove something from Anthony, and I found out about it because I ended up in the City of Night.
Wow.
And somebody that's there who works in one of these, I don't want to say mock bars because I don't really know if it's legit or not. I've never drank there, but it was like in a lucid dreaming type state that you go to, but it's to me, it's real. But it's just like you're kind of in a dream state. You can only get there by going to sleep. That person warned me about something that was going on with Anthony, and then it turned into something. But we'll get into that in another show. What I wanted to say was where when me and you, Scorp, we talked.
Yeah.
You ended up in this City of Night. Do you want to describe it?
It's not like what we're experiencing here. It's a type of city. It has its own identity, basically, but it's always dark, and there's like a bunch of clouds everywhere. You can't see hardly anything. There's you got electric lights always on to kind of see. And that's for me. I wasn't actually out in the city. I was in like a hotel or apartment building, and that was the only place that I can be in that place. And I tried to find my way out multiple times and could never do it.
Until you woke up.
Yeah. And that was my only escape, was waking up.
And now it's strange because, okay, and I'm looking you dead in the eye, Armando, because we've never told you this now. And I'm not crazy. All right. I promise you.
Mm-hmm.
Even though we deal with some crazy stuff on these shows.
Yeah.
But I found him there. Okay.
You found him?
I found him there. Yes. And now
wow.
What happened was I went to sleep and I focused. Okay. He was asleep,
Mm-hmm.
in the other room. And so I went to sleep and I found him. I guess I followed him. And so we ended up, when he said the City of Night, I know exactly where that's at. That's where I ran into my friend who I helped get out of the dark room. The place that he described is very accurate. It's a multi-story building,
Right.
with no way in or out. Now, it looks like there's no way in, but there is an actual, almost like a maze of a spiraling staircase that there's multiple souls that are just walking up this staircase and going into this building. Now, I got in line, basically, and I went in, and I was not recognized as anybody different. Like I said, there's almost like a bouncer, I guess, that kind of lets you go in or out. They're kind of just shuffling you along. Now, once you get inside there, it's like I think what I believe is that they're using your energy from your soul to power something. It's like you're a battery.
Yeah.
Because I felt drained in there. And I found Scorp. And I was as I was trying to get him out, we couldn't find our way out. I finally was able to go through the wall. I just was like, in other words, it's almost like you're in a prison of your own mind. And I figured out that there is no real way out. You have to make your way out. And so I did, and I tried to get you to come. Now, when I was trying to pull him out, these bouncers or guards, whatever you want to call them, they converged and they kind of stopped him from coming. Is that correct?
Yeah, they grabbed me and pulled me back in as I was about to step out. And it was weird when he found his way out. He sees it as going through a wall. When he did that, a door appeared right where he went out to me. And when I tried to step through it, I was grabbed by these sentinels or whatever, these entities that are there, and pulled back in. I haven't been back there in a while, but as far as I can remember, as far as I know, if I were to go back there, I'd probably still be in that same place because I don't think I've ever made my way out of there.
Yeah.
That's freaky.
That was the closest I've ever come to getting out, was with his help.
Saw that door.
Yeah.
So do you think you astral projected there?
Yeah, the door, you mean?
No, did you leave your body?
Yes.
And
Oh,
go
yes.
to another
Sorry. I'm
dimension?
sorry. I couldn't. I'm totally. Yeah. That's pretty much what happened. Yes. It was like, yeah. And so when I came out of this building, I ended up kind of just on the ground. There's a ground there. It's not just floating. And I was walking around, and there were these two what looked like security guard type guys, and they were like, "Hey," and they started coming toward me. So then I stepped into this like darker area. It was like a shadow area, and it makes you kind of like invisible to these people or entities, and so they couldn't see me. And so then I ended up just kind of going into like what looked like a shed and kind of hiding, and then I just focused and I was back in my body and I woke up.
Well, you know that two things can happen at the same time. You can actually astral project your consciousness out of your body and have an overlapping dream state and lack awareness. So it becomes more real to you, but it's still you're in an overlapping dream. Yeah, there's an overlapping dream. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So if this happens to either of you again, where you feel like you're in another dimension, you can just say an affirmation. You say awareness now, clarity now, and it can change the dynamics of your overlapping dream.
We could never possibly understand all that's going on around us. And that's why I'm a believer in this. I'm of the opinion that when you experienced all that knowledge and everything in your near-death experience, I can totally understand why you felt so overwhelmed.
I couldn't take it back with me. That's what was the tragedy of it all. I felt it being erased out of my mind as I was going backwards into physical reality, and there was a real sense of grief over that. So when I woke up after being resuscitated, I looked around the field I was in. It was a bright, beautiful day in Virginia, and I just said, this is not reality.
So, Laura, what do you think of that, about this city that we've been in? Because I've been there many times, and I don't even know how I end up there. But
okay, what forms cities? What forms? Let's say. Okay, how am I going to say this? Crystallized thoughts of multiple people. Let's say a whole family dies. Terrible thing that they all die. Where do they go? Do they go straight to source? Sometimes not. Sometimes people don't get that far, and they create a reality. Now, they think it's heaven. It's not really quite heaven, but there's an actual physical reality to them. So I think that this city of night there's a lot of them out there. I'm just not explaining it that well, but there's a lot of perceived realities that people are attracted to, that collective thought really created. You know?
What do you think about that as far as our reality?
Yes. No. The physical reality is a dimension. This is another dimension, and the other dimension, when you die, is more thought responsive, because we couldn't think up a mountain and have a mountain appear. But when you die and you think up a mountain, you can actually go to one in one of the less dense layers of the astral.
Scorp, when you were going to this place, and you finally figured out that that's where you were. I mean, can you tell us like what was going on? What was happening there when you were there?
Well, it was different things every time I was there. I mean, one time I was there and I was trying to follow one of my favorite cousins to a family reunion, then I could never find my way to it because it was outside. Other times I was trying to find my way to a party with my high school best friend. You know who he is.
Yeah.
And I lost him and I couldn't find him, and I just kept going around in circles trying to find out where he was at. No matter which way I go, I'd end up back where I started. And it was, like I said, every time I went there, it was like different things like that to try and distract you from trying to find a way out, I guess is what it was doing.
You also mentioned that it was exhausting.
Yeah.
You would wake up tired, because same thing happened with Anthony.
Yeah.
When he was having that entity attached to him, he was tired all the time. And that's how we figured out something was wrong.
Psychic vampire.
Well, it was an entity.
Mm-hmm.
It was an entity, yeah, and it was attached to him, and it was draining him. He was sleepy all the time. I mean, always tired. No matter how much sleep he got,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
he always was tired. And that's, and so when I was at that city, there's this bar I like to go to, I guess. I don't want to say I like to go there because I end up there for some reason, but it's like these multi-layered bars, and all in one big platform. And it's like a giant treehouse. And there's a bartender guy there that's a friend of mine, and he's there, and he's told me stuff. He's given me information, and that helped me to unlock the mystery of what was going on with him. And so I was like, and then that's a whole nother ball of wax I don't want to get into, but
Wow.
it was it's pretty crazy. And then there have been like many, many people who have passed over who, when they die, I see them and I've talked to them. One of my friends, Jose, when he passed over, I talked to him. My cousin, when he passed, I've seen him many times. The last time I saw him was in a garden about 3 or 4 years ago. And he said that was the last time I was going to see him, while I was in this body. And he pretty much said goodbye. And that's happened to me many times. I've seen my grandfather, my grandmothers. Of course, the story. We did the Mother's Day where my grandmother helped me break. I had this really bad flu, Laura, and I almost died. And my grandmother appeared and helped me. And that leads into my other about the ghost stuff. Some of the ghost stuff that's happened to you. You had this story that about you were on. Scorp, you joined us. She's been on My Ghost Story.
Yes, I've been on that TV show. I was the only guest to be invited to do a second episode. They thought that the evidence that I brought, the audio, the videotapes from the paranormal investigators, they always try to debunk you, and they found them very credible. That was very nice.
That's very cool.
Do you want to tell us about that?
Well, I was pretty freaked out one night. I heard something outside, and I went to the window, and there was an apparition, a ghost, and he was very, very distraught. Tall, thin, angular man. I could see through him, although I knew he was dense. And, at first he said, "Let me in," and I was very upset. And he was pleading with me. He said, "Tell me when I can go back to work." And I said, "Well, I'll be outside and I'll talk to you in a few minutes." And I kind of waited, and then I got the flashlight, brought my dog out, and he was gone. And I had a friend come over, and she stepped into a cold spot. So it made it on My Ghost Story, and we had paranormal investigators that had taken some pictures in the bedroom and found orbs, which was, kind of interesting. And that was one episode. And the other episode was I had a landline phone that I kept, when the power goes out and stuff, when you live in rural Kentucky. So it would ring sometimes all by itself. I had unplugged it one time and taken out the batteries. It had batteries to use for my camera, and it rang. And I had a friend over, and she heard it ring, and then my TV went on and off, and the burglar alarm went on and off, and of course she left and never came back to my house. But that made it on My Ghost Story. We had paranormal investigators over to my house, and you could see this large orb come towards me, hover, and then go away. So that was on it. And I think that, I don't know, maybe the phone was a conduit. I'm not sure. But when I lived at that house over 10 years, I saw probably 90 to 100 orbs, and photographed, I don't know, maybe 20. We got a Class A EVP, which was good. Jeff Sanford got it, and he asked the question, "Are there any children here?" And it was in my bedroom. And then when he played it back, you could hear a clear, audible male voice that sounded like my late uncle said, "You have to look."
That's really interesting.
Yeah, there was nothing. I would sometimes be a little bit scared or startled, but, I'm not haunted. There's nothing negative following me. I think that these are relatives and friends that are trying to help me. And remember, guys, I've had 40 years of autoimmune disease, so I've had, 25 or 6 major operations, been at the brink of death a number of times, and in and out of the hospital with, real serious problems for 30 years. So I do have.
You're
I'm
a
doing
fighter
good now. Yeah, I am, but it hasn't been easy. But I really feel wrapped in love by some of these souls. Not all, but some.
Wow, that's simply amazing. And to think that, some people out there are closed off to this, or the thought of it, or so not everyone is built the same. Not as some are not as sensitive as others, and so on and so forth. But it's just, I think it's a sad thing that a lot of people intentionally and willfully close themselves off to this and never consider it.
I think I agree with you. I feel very blessed, very lucky that I have an increased perception after my NDE. And my super psychic, can I pick lotto numbers? Did I come back with wonderful gifts? No. But I do have an intuition that I didn't have before. Sometimes I'll meet somebody and I'll get real sick to my stomach and I have to be away from them. And, I get like a sixth sense about sometimes bad people and sometimes not. But I have been able to see, souls or spirits, and nobody gave me the lotto numbers, but they have, shown concern and care, and I don't freak out. I'm not upset about it at all. So I kind of welcome it.
Well, I think you're the first person that I've heard explain that the whole idea of seeing entities and so on and so forth, that, with I guess you could say with a positive attitude that they're not out to get me, I guess, for lack of better words, would be the attitude. They're out to get me, that kind of thing. Because most people, when they talk about that, that's kind of how it comes across.
Yeah, I got up and jumped out of bed and ran through the house one time. Luckily, I had clothes on. I didn't come to this maturity overnight. I just realized, when some of my fears took over, and it wasn't a fearful thing. It wasn't a terrible thing. I kind of don't believe in some of the negative connotations, like, the poltergeist. There's a lot I don't believe in. But what I do believe is what I've seen, what I've experienced. And I think after a near-death experience, you have a perception into another less dense reality that is in the same space we are.
Yes. And that, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because it reminds me of, first of all, you saying that you'd never had these, you don't believe in the poltergeist and all that. I'm of the opinion that, as far as you're concerned, you don't give off that negativity, so therefore it's not attracted to you. And I'm one of those firm believers that people who have these negative entities, and not all, I'm not using that word, that's an all, that's meaning 100%, and that's not what I'm saying. But I think that a good majority of people that have these evil entity spirits attached to them, or that find them, I think they have a lot of negativity in their life, and a lot of that stuff is going on, so that's why they attach themselves to them.
And the fear. You want to hear something funny, guys, to lighten this up? Okay, there is something that happens with me in televisions. Okay, I was down in Florida, and I put a TV in my room, and then every once in a while, like at 3 or 4 in the morning, it would come on by itself. So of course, it kind of got annoying. So I moved it, got a different one, got a different clicker, same thing. And the same thing happens with my TV that, I live in Kentucky now. This has happened to me quite a few times that, lights and electrical appliances will go on all by themselves at the middle of the night. And I had a security system, one of those motion detectors when I lived on my farm, and it would just go on by itself. It's some sort of electrical energy, but it is very startling to be woken out of a sound sleep and, the TV's blaring.
Oh, I bet it is. I bet it is. I stop and think about it often with folks like you that get in there and, they have these experiences, and then, of course, appliances start to act strange around them. And I don't think you're abnormal. for that happening to you. I think it's part and parcel with what you've experienced, or due to your experience, excuse me. So I just find it amazing that you had all this, I guess you could say, plethora of different yet connected type of phenomena around your I can't even talk right now, your event.
Yeah, it's funny. And when I've had paranormal investigators come to my house, they do these extensive, all the batteries and everything in the house, the wall clocks, the flashlights, and they all got drained. Even unopened boxes of batteries would get drained and die. I don't know what that means exactly, but it is just a little tidbit I wanted to share. It's kind of expensive.
I bet it is. And your case is very interesting to me because you say you started out as a very, straightforward, very pragmatic, very logical, rational, linear thinker. You had to see it to believe it. And if you saw it and you saw it, you believed it. And it was that simple. But now you were thrust into this whole world after your accident.
I didn't sign up for this. But the thing, guys, that was kind of strange to me was, if I was the old me, if I heard somebody tell a story about what I'd been through, I would have, I wouldn't have completely discounted it, but you couldn't have sold it to me. You just couldn't sell me on anything that wasn't really right in front of me, three-dimensional and in living color. It just wouldn't happen. So when I finally let go of most of my fears, I mean, we all have some fears, but when I really let go, I was able to perceive more. But it's random. It never happens when I want it to happen. I do a lot of hemisync meditations to try to open up the channels, and sometimes I get something, and 9 times out of 10 I don't. Or maybe 99 times out of 100 I don't. It's very, very random. And I don't think that too many people have, quote, psychic abilities. I think we all have a pinch of psychic, but nobody's got a full cup.
That's right. I believe that too.
I like that. I like that analogy. And with that being said, I was going to ask you this earlier, and it completely slipped my mind, but it came back to me. Have you tried sensory deprivation when you are meditating?
Yes.
You've tried complete sensory, because I have a friend of mine that I served with, and of course he suffers from PTSD, and as a high majority of my friends that I served with do. And he tried out one of those tanks where you completely do the whole sensory deprivation, and he said it was quite the trip. I think those were the words he used. And I can only think that it would enhance your concentration and focus on what it is you're trying to do when you're sensory deprived or in an environment such as that.
Well, I use Hemisync binaural beats CDs with different. I get them from the Monroe Institute. They really can help facilitate meditation and contact. But I think you have to have a little bit of the ability. Now, I found out much later in life, after my near-death experience. My grandmother told me when I was 24 about her mother. My great-grandmother had the gift. That's what they would say. And she healed people, and she had real psychic abilities. But nobody told me this till I was 24, so she had died, and I didn't know anything about my great-grandmother, other than she was Canadian and very nice. But my grandmother finally, when I told her about my near-death experience and, things like that, my grandmother shared with me that it ran in the family.
Well, that's good to know. Then that just, there's a genetic link there. If you want to look at it from this plane of existence, you have a genetic link for that predisposition, potentially. There's a big chance, versus someone who says, I don't know of anyone on either side of my family who has the gift of any kind. So I think you're doing well there. And another thing I was going to ask you is that with this, with the gift and everything, in your great grandmother being a healer like that, did you ever, you said you never felt anything, you didn't feel any kind of this with the gift before your accident, correct?
No, I mean, no, not at all. Oh, now one thing that happened that was weird. When I was 12 years old, of course, this is another horse accident. When I was 12 years old, I got crushed. A horse fell on top of me, and I rode. It was off that experience. Anyways, just before I was about to get my leg broken, I was watching about 12 feet away. I saw the back of my curly, wavy hair and my T-shirt and my jeans and the horse. So I guess I was out of body for about 3 or 4 seconds, and then the horse crushed me and crushed my leg, and it was a pretty grisly accident. It was pretty awful.
You've had quite a few spills in your life involving horses.
All horses, and if you know what, then I went on as an adult to have a horse farm, and I got clobbered on my 27th birthday. I got knocked out. And I didn't have a near-death experience. I had a very bad headache afterwards.
That's the thing. My stepmom had horses, and I've grown up around them. My grandparents had horses. Most horses get real nervy around me for whatever reason. Like dogs, cats, typically it just depends on the animal. But for some reason, hoofed animals just seem to get kind of jumpy. I don't know, when I'm around. I don't know why that is. Maybe because I'm big. I don't know. But if I get around horses, they start moving their heads back and forth and acting weird, and I just don't. I'm not comfortable.
If you fed them and they were your horses, they turn into lap dogs. Now I've had quite a few horses, but I had one horse that was special. That was my child for 23 years, and he was huge and he was very intimidating, and he was like a pussycat with me.
What breed was he?
He was a registered American Paint.
Oh, so how big was he?
16-1 hand.
Oh, wow. He's a good-sized horse. He's about the size of a thoroughbred.
But he was huge, muscular. He was like a man's horse. And here I am, 120-pound woman, But he was like my child. I mean, I just adored him. And I've always adored horses. But when he died in 2012, I thought, I've been clobbered enough. I'm not getting any more horses.
Well, it's unfortunately we all reach a point when we have to say enough is enough when it comes to the horses are great, and we have to say enough is enough sometime, even though we don't want to.
When you're falling, the ground doesn't get any softer,
One of the things I was going to talk to you about, Lura, is you were talking. Me and you talked off air about. I lived in a house that was haunted. You've had your experiences in these haunted places that you were at. And, the people have this perception. Like, I had somebody who I guess you could say heckled me or whatever. He was like, oh, the reason that you're having all these experiences is because something's wrong with you, And first I thought he was trying to say like I was mental or something, but then he turned into a sermon. He was like, well, you're open to demonic attack because there's something you've done, and that's why, and blah, blah, blah. Because there's so many people that just believe rigidly in these whatever. And so
the religious views. That's what
religious. Well, in that case, religious views. But there's some people who are just diehard science, and that's it. And either way, it's annoying. But
they never go outside of that.
They don't go outside of the and they've never had the experiences I've had, so they don't even know half of what I'm talking about. But one of the things I will say is that when you deal with the spiritual aspect of, and you deal with entities, it's not constant, folks. Okay, I'm going to say that right now. It wasn't the Amityville Horror. Okay, people, we didn't run from our house in the middle of the night screaming with blood coming on the walls. Get out! That wasn't happening. Okay, it was like I said before, it was like seasonal. Now, for me anyway, it was. That particular house had some stuff going on, and it wasn't all the time. There'd be like a spike of activity, and then it would slow down, and then it would come back, and then it would. Is that the case for you too? Did that happen with you, Laura?
Well, it's happened in quite a few different homes. I mean, everywhere I've lived since I'm really heavy, since I'm 25. It even happened in a hospital to me. So And I don't feel like I'm really not a big believer in the demons and the boogeyman and haunted houses. I think there's an occasional ghost, but I don't think there's a lot of ghosts. I think most people transition and know they're dead. Occasionally, you might have an echo of an impression of somebody's soul. But, is a place being haunted? Not too much. I don't believe in it too much.
Yeah, well, the place where we're working at now, supposedly, well, actually, I'm pretty sure because we talked to the police, but there was a murder that took place in what we now use.
Now that's different.
Yeah, there was a murder there, but
violent death, that's different. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing, though. Like, there was a murder there, a double murder.
Oh, wow.
And it was right there, and we used it as a staging office, whatever. But it happened a long time ago. Not a long time ago, like 3 years ago. That's not a long time, really, but it happened. And we were told of this, and I don't feel anything in there. When I go in there, usually when there's something around, I feel it. And I don't feel anything in there. I feel it, when it's dark in there, when you first go in, you might feel a little something, but I don't really feel like, like I don't go in there and get the creeps. I mean, because there's been posts where I've worked where we've had some serious like activity. The church that I told you about.
Oh, yes, you told me about the church.
We haven't done the episode on that yet, so we're going to save that one. We're going to do it closer to Halloween. We're going to do a show about that. But there was a lot of different places I've worked at where I've felt the activity. I mean, it's palpable. But, like I said, in most of the places I've been at, it's not, you're not getting throat punched by demons. I mean, that seems,
chairs thrown at you or something like that.
Well, yeah, because it's like The Conjuring and all these shows that they put out, these movies, whatever, all these different types of movies. They act like it's always going to be the Poltergeist or the Exorcist or Amityville Horror or something like that. It's not really the case. I mean, you do have some weird stuff that'll happen, but it's not constant either, and just because you're in tune to it, spiritually aware, doesn't mean that that you're always going to experience it. And there is a way to kind of tune it out too, Well, sometimes when things will start to happen, I'll see something, I just kind of ignore it as best I can and it'll just go away. But that's not always the case. But with you, like, can you give me an example, I guess, for the people listening, can you give us an example of like a terrifying incident that happened to you?
Oh God, this one was not good. Okay, back when I was young, I was an attractive girl. One day I went over to the DMV, and there was like this guy that worked there, and he was like so creepy. I don't mean to sound like a valley girl, but he was just like, so I try not to look at him. I don't want to be rude or anything like that. So, that night I went to bed, and I woke up, and that guy in the DVM, I could hear somebody whistling, walking down in my house in Florida, and it was the guy that I had seen at the DVM.
The DMV.
The DMV.
Yeah.
DMV. I can't get the words.
It's okay.
Okay. So he was still creepy, and he came into my bedroom and he was looking at me, and it was like he was luminous, and it was a horrible experience. And I guess maybe he died that afternoon. Not really sure what happened to him. Didn't go to check, but I assumed that he passed away. And he came to me. I don't know why. And that was scary, and it felt very, very, he felt quite menacing and very resentful of young women. And I got a bad feeling because he was a bad guy, and he was still creepy ugly. And that was my scary experience. The other experiences I've had have been wonderful.
What about this, though? What do you think? I'm sure you would know. I mean, but just by chance, do you think maybe he was already deceased and he was in the DMV hanging around?
No, I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Oh God, I had never thought about that. That could be. He looked like a stuffed sausage in his Bermuda shorts, and he had like a bald head. I mean, he was really, really an unattractive man, and real snarly. He was sort of leering at me. I was a little haughty back then, I have to say. And I wasn't rude or anything, but he was definitely noticing me. And of course, you dress sexy because you think you have good taste in your 20s and you're really wearing a vulgar outfit, and maybe, that caught his attention. I don't know. I mean, nobody reacted to him. As I think about it, nobody else was noticing him at the DMV but me.
Well, maybe that's the case. I mean, and you being in your 20s, believe me, everybody knows what my opinion on when you're in your 20s, you really should just be quiet and look good. That's pretty much my opinion on that. I mean, I get these 20-year-old smarmy little.
Sale,
Well, me too. I mean, I'm in my 40s. I get these people, these little smarmy 25-year-old. Actually, basically, I really don't care to hear. And when I've had guys work for me that are young guys, and then they want to give me their opinions about stuff, I'm like, that duly noted, okay? And then please just be quiet, because I don't really, and I deal with these young women at times that try to tell, they run these complexes and things that I do security, and they will start to kind of boss me around and then I had one at this one complex that told me was trying to tell me about life, and how I needed to do this and do that with my company, because she was upset with one of my patrol captains. And I'm just like, lady.
Oh, gracious.
I had to finally just let it rip. And I just said, look, I'm going to tell you something. You're 27, and I'm a 40-year-old man, and I really don't care to hear your opinion. Well, that's fine. We'll just not do business. I say, well, we won't do business. And then her boss reversed her decision, which created more resentment. Ultimately, we had to quit. But yeah, that's just me getting on a soapbox for a minute. If you're listening to the show and you're in your 20s, you look great, okay? And even if you don't look great, you can go and work out and get yourself to look great and enjoy your 20s and have a good time and live it up. But you will eventually get to be my age, and you will look back and be like, damn, I was stupid. So that's pretty much just my opinion. I mean, I'm not knocking, because we've all been there, guys. Like, Sal, 90 years ago, you were in your 20s. I mean, it's...
Exactly.
So this guy that came into my bedroom, this came into my home, he was whistling, and he came in and he had very bad intentions, like, real resentment, he had very, very dark thoughts. He's a terrible person, but I had never thought that perhaps maybe he was a ghost that I had saw, at the motor vehicle place. I don't know, but that's a very good insight, and that was a scary experience. But other times I've seen, like my mother or different people that I love very dearly, and seen the full form apparition or spirit, and it's been wonderful.
And that's the bulk of it, right? The bulk of your experiences were good, positive.
Yeah, most of them were good. Now, I didn't have a good reaction to them in the beginning, but when I let go of my fear and got a little more educated as to what it was, and it's been wonderful. I mean, it's been a comfort to me. I mean, I was in the hospital one time, just really, really in bad shape, and the woman across the hall had died, and then some orbs came in my room, and I felt cared about. It's not like they have like my own cheerleading team on the other side, but it's nice to know that there is a connection that, occasionally I can perceive. I think they're around us a lot more that we just can't perceive them.
Oh, absolutely. And what you were saying about being able to have that security blanket of knowing what it's like on the other side and what you feel is what's going to be there. That's got to be a comforting feeling, because a lot of people, they are just scared to death of death. They are just terrified of death. And like I've said before, I had kind of come to terms that I really didn't care whether I lived or died at one point. And then I started, taking care of my nephews and my godson, and then my wife came into my life, and I've been able to help people and help them grow into being good adults, or my nephews, whatever. And now that I have someone like my wife that I really care about, it's renewed my life as far as like wanting to be alive and do what, whereas before it was just kind of like, I didn't really care. I mean, I really didn't give a crap. I mean, I didn't want to go to jail, but I really didn't care, like it was like, other than that, there wasn't anything that was You know, it was like, if I die, I die. You know what I mean? And whatever happens in my life happens in my life, you know? And I've kind of, you know.
I think that, you know, but you're a person that's really, really gone through a strawberry life and come out on the other side a lot wiser. And you're going to take that wisdom when you go and you transition.
Yeah, and I think when I came into this world, I had a lot of things to work out because everybody can relate to the fact that everybody at some point has felt like they've suffered. I've suffered some tragedy, pretty serious tragedy. I've suffered pretty hard stuff has happened to me. And I, at times, felt like I just wasn't going to be able to take another breath. I just felt like laying down and giving up and going to sleep and never coming, you know. And that's happened to me many times. I just was like, I'm done. I can't do it anymore. I can't take another step. I can't go on. And then you have to. You have no choice. Either that or you check out and then you end up trapped like my friend. And I knew that wasn't an option. And so you just have to keep on going and become stronger as a person and grow. And thank goodness that I did learn a lot of the lessons I learned in this life. And I do believe like that. I'm going to carry them on to the other side and hopefully be able to help others. You know, once I go to the other side, I want to be able to help however I can, you know, try to have a servant's heart, you know, to try to help people, you know.
Yes. That's always the way, in my opinion, I've been listening to what you said, Laura, and especially it keeps recurring back to me about you said about earlier you mentioned that gentleman that you met with the brown eyes and all this stuff. The gentleman, yes.
Oh, the man on the train. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the guy in the DMV. I'm like, gentleman? No. You're calling him a gentleman?
No. I wanted to help him. I mean, I really had a huge attraction to him. I really liked him.
But I think that has a lot to do, because I look at life in terms of everyone that crosses your path for a reason. And that's one of my sayings. You know, you can either choose to learn from it or not. The choice is yours. Same thing when, you know, I'm a career military man. I did almost 21 years in active duty. I was in the first Gulf War, did 2 tours in Iraq this time around. And so, throughout my years in the military, I always heard the saying, and I adopted it, that you can learn something from every one of your leaders you ever have throughout your military career. I didn't know what to think at first when I first heard it, but after after years and staying in, I said, yeah, there is something you can learn from every individual or in that case was leaders. I said, if nothing at all, you can learn that you don't want to be like that leader. And so you transpose that to regular everyday society, you can learn something from everyone you come in contact with. If nothing else, you will learn that you don't want to be like that person.
Yeah, even if it's to do the opposite of what they do. I've done that too.
You know, and so
absolutely.
So it's everyone comes into your life for a reason. And obviously you didn't get to explore and figure out what that was with that particular gentleman, but I have a feeling that it'll come back around again in another life or on the next level of existence, on the next plane.
Yeah, I mean, his attraction towards me, okay, when I got on this train and he saw me, the way he stood up and the way he looked at me, it could have either been I was the strongest attraction that he'd had, and he got up physically and really, or he could have been like that with all the women he met that he thought that maybe he had a chance with.
True.
Well, being a guy, that's probably the case.
Being a guy, that's probably
the case.
Guys.
But the way he looked at me, it was like really, really intense, like there was a connection. Now, I had seen him before, you know, because I worked in television and so did he. So I had seen him before, and I always thought like he was my type. But, you know, let's face it, in New York City, I met a lot of good-looking guys and a lot of guys who were better looking than him. But the way he looked at me and the way he made me feel, that it's so funny then that there was such a connection that I was able to find him.
Isn't that weird, though? That's how it is, because You can meet a woman who's super attractive and maybe there's a spark there or something, but you can meet a woman who's not as physically attractive as that person, and there's just way more there. It's like you almost know that person from a past or whatever. And there's so many people that look good on the outside, but they are
Inside,
not. They are rotten to the core because I've been with them.
Like I said, I can vouch for that particular statement, and just for the plain and simple fact that just because what's on the exterior doesn't dictate what's on the interior. And with that being said, my wife says, "Oh, I'm not this raving, supermodel beauty. And I look at her and I said, that's not what attracted me. I said, it's what you had going on inside. And the more I spoke to her, the more the mind connection really happened. So it's definitely on the interior. But again, I will also look at, take into consideration and actually put stock in what Wolf said. Sometimes it's a past life.
I think so.
It's still there.
What about this, Lura? I was told one time by someone who was very astute. He was a Buddhist shaman, and he was very good at what he did. And one of the things he told me was that we are born with this body because in the spirit you can see the true form of a person, and so this body shields us from what we really are. It houses so you have to go through the different stages of learning by interacting with people that, if you're on the other side, you wouldn't give them the time of day. You wouldn't interact with them because you can see them for what they are. But in this world, you can't. So you have to decipher and you have to learn, and that's part of the growing and learning process. Do you agree with that statement?
I've really never contemplated it. I mean, that would take me a while to kind of digest and dissect before I could, give an opinion, but it's food for thought.
Well, go ahead and digest. We'll wait.
Okay. I mean, it's amazing. You know what, guys? I think that there are people that we meet that we've met in another life. I met this one guy casually, and it wasn't romantic at all, but we just had this comfort, and there was a huge age span and nothing in common, and just kind of, became casual friends. And I know he felt the connection just as much as I. And my mother even said, she says, you're so connected to him. And I said, I know, it's just really weird. And we were only connected for a couple of years. And then, he moved away, things like that. But it was really strange. Like when I met him, in 10 minutes, I felt comfortable. And I don't go out of, I have male friends, but I don't knock myself out to meet new male friends, So I think that we do hook up with people that there's this huge draw to, and huge, you feel so comfortable, like you just really click with this person, male and female. I'm talking about friends, not romance.
Mm-hmm. Yes. No. The gosh, I can't even think right now. The platonic friendship, the very definition of platonic friendship, where you're like, I enjoy your company. Everything you talk about, interests me. And
Sal, me and you made a connection when we first met.
Oh yeah. That's really interesting. We'll break it down the synopsis. Lura, our first time we met and we started talking, it didn't end until about 8 hours later.
Yeah, we just talked and talked. And my nephews were there in Tomball with us.
Yeah,
and
they fell asleep.
They were just like, geez, these guys can talk and talk and talk. And we were talking about history. We were talking about everything. Because we had exchanged information back and forth because you'd heard me on Dogman Encounters. And
there's a connection there that is probably pre-physical life.
Yeah. Let me ask you another little tidbit I wanted to tell you. I have a really strong connection with a lot of my guys that I worked with, in the last 20 years. I had like a group of guys that we all became good friends. We consider ourselves brothers, and we are all still very close. Not as close as we once were, but we all still are close. And a lot of them came to my birthday party. I was thrown a pseudo surprise birthday party by my brother and my wife. And a couple of them came down from, far off, to come and see me. And it was like we started talking, and it was just like nothing. We hadn't seen each
Picked
other.
up where you left off.
Yeah, it's just like it's always like that with me and these guys. And my wife is fascinated by the way that how close we are. And I told her, I said, these guys, this is one thing that happened to me. And I don't know if I've told you this, Sal, and I want to tell you this, Laura, and then you give me your opinion on this, because I don't know what this is, but I think it's a past, one of my dreams that I had when I have these weird dreams, and I am gearing up for that again, because I'm going to be 45 next summer. And so I will probably be getting these weird dreams again. I don't know why it's every 5 years, but it is. One of the dreams I had was, I just remember like going to sleep, and it was like the minute my head hit the pillow, I woke up and I was walking through reeds, and I was with 4 or 5 other guys. We were all speaking Spanish, and I was handling a dog. I had a big mastiff, a big Spanish mastin, and they were just barking and whatever. And I just remember I could feel my breath. You know how you're going like that? And I could feel it, and it was hot, and it was so hot. And I just remember thinking that we were walking, and you could hear our feet crunching on the reeds, and there was like this marshy, watery, the water was going up over my feet. And I remember having this breastplate on, and I just remember being really, really hot. And I was carrying in my one hand the dog leash, this leather, and in the other hand I had this like sword, like a thin, small sword, but it was like a pretty heavy piece of weaponry. And I just remember like my head was uncovered, but I knew that I was supposed to be wearing a helmet, and I wasn't. And then all of a sudden I just hear this like this chirping, loud, yelling noise, and all these native looking people popped up and just started flinging like arrows and stones at us. And we all got down, and then I woke up. And then I had another dream that was maybe 2 or 3 days later, and I was in this temple, and I was walking through the temple, and I just remember going up to what looked like an altar, and you could see it was just pulled and caked with blood. And I just remember seeing piles of bodies, things that had been, and just being sickened, like just to my very core, to my gut. And I was with these same 3 or 4 guys, and we were talking in Spanish again, and we were talking about the grotesquerie of what we had just, and you could smell the acrid smoke in the air, like there was something that had been on fire, and the smell of death was everywhere, which, Sal, you can relate to that.
Yeah.
And I just smelled it, and I remember going up to this, it was beautiful. I mean, you could walk over the edge, and you could see this big stone that was cut out, and I looked out over this city, and there were these pyramids. What do you call them? The ziggurats. And I was looking out over the city, and I remember one of my friends that I was with, and I knew it was one of the friends that I'm with, friends now. I knew it was him, but we were in different bodies. And he kicked over this altar over, like they kicked over this, and they were just screaming at it, and they began to tear down some of the weird looking leathery tapestries that were hanging up, and they were cursing this place. And when I woke up, I immediately knew what it was. I was a conquistador in this dream, and I was with these guys, and we had just defeated the natives, yeah. And it was a horrific scene of what they were doing, because I had these memories that popped into my head within the dream of witnessing them committing human sacrifice when we were, as I guess, their guests, and we were being shown this.
I think that was a recollection.
A recollection. That's what it feels like, because I have this memory of it.
I don't consider that a dream whatsoever. I think that was a very real thing. And the feeling that I get in this life and in your past life, that you were a leader.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely felt like I was a leader of that group,
yeah.
But I wasn't one of the main leaders, but that was my unit. That was my guys.
Yeah.
And here's another weird thing that happened back in the mid to late 90s. I was working at a bar called La India Bonita, and that's no longer there. It's called something else now. And I was doing security, and it was a bad place. It was pretty much Mexican nationals that all went there. And I was dressed like I had to wear a vest, and I had a gun, and I had this really nice expandable PR-24 that I had to use. And so I was on there were these big steps going up to the back of this place. And I remember getting into it with these two individuals and then a third that came running up. And I was on the top of those steps. And as I was coming down those steps, and this sounds crazy, something happened. And I raised up my expandable baton to drive them off because they had just literally stabbed a guy in the parking lot. And when I tried to intervene, they began to come at me. It was a very dangerous job, and I don't even know why I did these kind of jobs. I guess I just was attracted to that kind of work. But I pulled out the baton and was getting ready to do what I do. And I'm looking you right in your eyes saying, I'll tell you this, and I've never told you this, and Anthony, you've heard this story. We were not there where we were not in Austin, Texas at the La India Bonita. The sound of the music changed to like a fluted weird war drumming with flutes, weird noise. And then I was not me. I was that person. And this was the first time this was before I ever had the dreams, long before that. And I was this person again.
Kind of like you flashed back into
it. But what was so weird about it was the guys that I was engaging with, it happened to them too.
Interesting.
They noticed it. I know they did. I never asked them because I had to fight with them, but everybody just kind of stopped for a second, and they were on the steps of this ziggurat, and I was on the steps of the ziggurat, and I looked around, and I was like, kind of for a second there going like, whoa, this is weird. And I realized later that even that flashback, like I think it was a weird moment that actually happened to me. And those guys that I was fighting with, they kind of were looking at themselves.
Like what had happened to me.
Like what just happened. And they looked like quintessential Aztecs. That's what they looked like. And, it was only because I went and I looked it up in a book, and I was like, what was that? What was that? And it was about 10 seconds. I mean, literally, if you counted like 1, 2, 3, 4, it was that long. And I was holding a sword, and we all just kind of froze.
It's kind of like you got teleported.
Well, yeah, and they were on the steps, and we were about to fight, and it was like it had happened before, but in a past life. And so when we kind of came back to where we were in the reality that we were in the late 90s or whatever, they just stopped. And I was kind of standing there, and those three guys just kind of like looked at each other, looked at me, and they all just booked it. Instead of coming at me and us fighting, and I literally just dropped my baton and was like, what the heck just happened? What was that? Like, to this day, I cannot explain that experience. I don't know what that was. But it was like we were all reliving we were about to relive something that had happened before.
Yeah. Something to the effect of deja vu.
It was more than deja vu, dude. It wasn't deja vu. This was it was like I was transported back to a past life, doing something similar to what was about to happen right then. But it spooked all of us into the point where we just stopped.
Well, talking about that particular, referencing that particular situation brings to mind from, to me about there are people out there, and there's been actual academic, study and scientific study that backs it up. But there are people out there who believe that we live in a three-dimensional fractal holographic universe.
Oh yeah, very possible.
And they've done scientific studies on all of that. And so if we live in a holographic universe, let's throw that out there. If we do, then the whole idea of being quote unquote shifted back into that particular place and time, that like what you mentioned, would not really be out of the
realm of possibility.
And of course, Lura having, I guess I guess here's what I've been trying to say is when you get that out of body experience, you're on the astral plane, for lack of better words. Correct, Lura?
Yeah. Yeah.
So being shifted from one point to another, I would say you had one of those moments where you were kind of like I was talking about earlier, the Philip K. Dick Electric Dreams.
You keep referencing. I got to go back and read this because now I'm just curious.
The Electric Dreams is that series on Amazon Prime. Check it out. They're stories based off his writings, but he had these super lucid, vivid dreams, and he wrote it all down. So you should check out his stuff if you want to read his stuff or that show. But God, I forgot where I was going with this. But the point being is that you flashing back to that different time, and then it could have also been that they, quote unquote, you were destined to meet again.
That was weird, yeah. And I don't know what that was.
Different circumstance, but same thing.
Yeah, and I wonder if that's how it played out in the past, because I know that in another past life scenario I was a soldier, and I remember, but it was a modern, and I was modern era, and I was splashing water on my face, and I just remember hearing the bombardments going off in the distance, and knowing that it was, I was about to meet my end. I felt it. It was very palpable, and I was a German soldier, and I was about to die. And I knew it because the Soviets were on, I told you this one. And it was weird because I was like, I was seeing the world through this person's eyes as me, Josh Turner. But then when I backed up out of that body, that person that I was sensed my presence. Does that make any sense? It was almost like he got chills down his back, and he turned around and looked, and he was like, whoa, what was that? And then I kept thinking, well, I'm you. You're me, but you're sensing me from the future. And it was so bizarre. And then I'm not going to get into a long dissertation about that life because I had some weird stuff that happened there, but I remember dying and kind of going up and then going sideways into like a ball. And looking down at my body as I was bayoneted by Soviet soldiers over and over again as they rolled over us, because they had T-34s and they were destroying us. And I think that's what has attracted me to history too, because another thing too, the whole 7 life paths, not all actually being from here, but living several lives. I don't have any affinity or any memories of a medieval time, which is weird. I have an ancient memory of ancient times, like Roman, Greek. But then it's gone. There's nothing, and then until the colonial...
You skip the Dark Ages.
That's what I'm thinking. And then like the colonial ages come.
Yeah, the Renaissance forward.
Yeah, and then from there, I have these lives that I remember like pieces of up until World War II. And then beyond that, it was just like, then it's here. But there was like these... there's a gap, and I don't know why. There's this, like, the medieval time was just gone. You
weren't destined to be cycled through.
Let me explain something that might help. I
yes,
think
please.
I could help you. Okay, when our souls go into physical reality, think of it this way, because it's more complex. So our soul decides to journey into physical reality. We split into many different personalities at different times in history, but we do it all at once because there is no time on the other side.
Yeah.
So that is my best explanation how to explain it. That we fracture into these personalities, and then when we collect ourselves, when the personalities all come back into one, that is source.
Yes.
It's not going to God. That's not heaven. That is, you're coming back to your source. So all the personalities come back together. What happens past that, I don't know. That's as far as I've gotten.
That's really interesting. Again, I know I mentioned earlier about Billy Carson. He just put out a book called The Emerald Tablets of Thought or Thoth, however you want to say it. You should check him out and hear what he has to say and what his take is on it, because a lot of what you just said, the only thing that's real, he does state that the only thing that's truly real is consciousness.
Consciousness, yeah.
And so everything else is that part of that three-dimensional holographic universe that he talks about. And of course,
it's like things are real because we agree that it's all real.
Yeah. And part of it is also the part that he did say, and he used the analogy saying, consciousness is, think of it like your brain. He goes, if your brain by itself is in there, he goes, it can't sense the outside world. It has to have a few friends. It's got to have the eyes, the ears, the nose, the senses, right? In order to get that information to get back into the brain where the consciousness draws the three-dimensional experience from. So it's wow, it's just it's all mind-blowing.
Mind-blowing, it is.
It's very mind-blowing.
It is, and it's, and just to think, you have a near-death experience, other people have had them, and that we come back with information, but it's how the mind interprets it. Of course, we're not seeing the full picture as much as I've had. I've only had glimpses into the afterlife. It's not like I got to stay around and take the tour, but at the glimpses, the glimpses sort of awakened my mind, or at least set me on the right path spiritually. I mean, it was a long haul. I didn't always take it well. I mean, I've made big mistakes. I tried to be a nice person, but I was under tremendous stress with physical illness. So, I wasn't always doing my finest.
I think you were doing just fine with what you had to work with.
Yeah, I did. Thank you. I did the best I could with what I had to work with. Would I have liked to have a different life? Yeah, but everybody wants, to have be born in the vanilla world, but
the grass is greener on the other side.
What is the song? I think it's Tears for Fears, but I'm not for sure. It's
Everybody
wants to rule the world. And when I was a kid, I remember thinking,
that.
I don't think I'd want that response. You just said it. I thought that's a lot of responsibility, because as a kid, I was having a hard time just doing my chores.
Yeah, well, a lot of that comes from the ignorance, or you could say absence of experience. That those type of thoughts you would entertain and actually want, because you lack experience and along with ignorance. And going back to what you mentioned earlier in the show, that Wolf, that those with all the wealth and power are usually the ones that are just so destitute or desolate on the inside, because they view what's in this three-dimensional world
like as important
as the important things. And
it's not
part of, and I'm not here to toot my own horn or anything like that, but I'm a firm believer in that you can't take it with you when you go.
No.
So all you really need here on this plane of existence is just the things you need. Everything else is excess. I don't know what I would do if I was a filthy rich person, but I don't desire to be filthy rich. It's not something if it happens, great. If it doesn't happen, that's fine. I'll do what I need to do in order to get through this life, and I will, toil and toil through my trials and tribulations as best as I can, because all I know is that at the end of the day, as long as I'm a better person tomorrow than I am today, then I've accomplished. I've taken another step along the journey.
The Buddhists believe that suffering brings enlightenment too. That's another.
That's true. That's very true.
Because only through suffering can you transcend.
Right. You're learning to be a better person. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So what's your take on that, Lura?
Well, my late sister always said that I was taking the accelerated soul course.
You did get the accelerated soul course, because I can only imagine that I've never, I cannot honestly say I've ever had any type of paranormal activity that happened to me in any sense that I could recall that was directly kind of like Wolf had that encounter with that dogman creature.
Well, I'm pretty grateful for what has happened to me. I mean, I have, I am truly, truly grateful, because I have that knowing what is going to happen, or at least I have a general idea how things work on the other side. And I kind of needed to know that, because I was going through a lot, but I would have survived, I guess, without it. I just think it's an after effect. People that have had near-death experiences, from what I understand in my research, is a lot of them come back with limited abilities. And that's what I'm going to do my TV show on. I've already written the treatment for near-death TV, and I'm going to be interviewing and doing a TV show on celebrities and authors who've had near-death experiences and their after effects, because I'm fascinated. Did anybody travel the same road I've traveled?
As far as traveling the same road you've traveled, you mean when you were on the other side or on this plane of existence?
No, psychically. I mean, having the near-death experience, being able to visit and see loved ones, having a hug from a loved one that is dead.
I would venture to say you're probably going to get a lot of similar experiences from some of those people. Similar to yours. Maybe not exactly the same, but definitely very similar.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's going to be interesting, and I'm excited to do it.
I just find it amazing because sometimes, because I haven't had my own real paranormal activity or event, I kind of feel cheated and left out.
I'm sure you have. You just didn't notice it.
Quite possibly.
You weren't able to perceive it,
yeah.
Perhaps.
You're a little indigo kid who can't do it. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just messing with you.
No, I mean, the funny thing is, I got to tell you, with the TVs, having the TVs, just go on and, you're not even near the remote. And there's got to be something electrical that goes in with the energy that, when souls come here, I think. There's something going on, or somebody wants to wake me up.
The TV went on and off in our old haunted house that we were in, and that happened quite often. And we would just be in our respective rooms, and the TV would just come on, and it just.
Well, also, when you mentioned when you were in the kitchen that one time and you said, "Oh, F this ghost and this and that," and that thing fell on your head.
Yeah, I had a couple beers in me and was like thinking, you know what, screw this. I'm not scared of this. And then, boom, hit me right in the head with a, and I talk about that in a previous episode.
Gentlemen, very, very humbly. I have a sense of humor about it, but I didn't talk about it from 1979 to 2009. Now, that's a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Very much so.
You're talking 30 years of not talking about it with anybody.
God, how did you keep it bottled up?
I talked to my late sister when she was alive. We discussed it a lot.
Well, at least you had her to talk to.
Yeah, and I did have an uncle who had the gift. I talked to him sometimes, and he'd had similar things.
Now, what about your sister when she passed? Did you ever commune with her?
Yes.
Oh, man.
She warned me about a pending accident and saved me from getting hit by a truck.
Oh.
Wow. That's, well, it sounds like you've had a positive interaction with your sister in the afterlife, so to speak.
Yeah.
I think that's great. I mean, I guess I was never fully convinced that the afterlife or anything associated with that was always negative. I think it's just a matter of what you draw to yourself. When you
were in combat though, Sal, what did you think would happen if you got hit and you were taken out?
What do I think would have happened?
No. What did you think at the time when you were young and going through all that?
Well, I went through the second round of Iraq in my late 30s.
Well, so that's still young. Come on, I'm early 40s, so give me that.
Pretty awful.
Yeah, I was around your age whenever that happened.
Okay, so but still, as a young man that I am, if you were just kidding. Okay, look, like what I'm saying is, at that time, did it go through your head? Because me and you have had similar stuff. We're not going to get into it, but
I never, the whole idea of going out there on, out on missions and everything else, and basically being a target, waiting to get hammered by by IEDs or you name it. I learned quickly to just put it out of my head.
And so you never thought if I die, where I'm going to go, what I'm going to do, what's going to happen to me?
No. I think people feel a guilt when they think about that, or they get scared. I never gave it much thought because part of me said, well, I've always tried to be the best person I could be, and I'm not a thief. I'm not a murderer, and all those horrible things. I said, I'm going to be all right. But I never actually thought that I was going to get taken out when I was in Iraq. I never felt that impending doom, for lack of better words.
You know that there are
Thank God you
guys
came
that
back.
go out in the
Yes.
field, okay? Because I did some stuff. I'm going to get into it. Like I said, I don't want to ever really get into that. But me and you've talked extensively about stuff. There are guys that go out kind of with that feeling that they're going to be taken out, and it happens.
Yeah.
And you're just like,
I kind of know.
it is so weird that they're just kind of like, and it's like they just know, and then there's other guys that, like my buddy who had PTSD, like he would just, just stand up and be in the middle of it and not ever feel like he could be eating an apple and they're shooting at him. I never did understand that.
It affects everyone differently.
Yeah.
Now, did you ever see somebody dying? This is my question, guys. Did you ever see somebody who was wounded and dying and going to die start talking to somebody that wasn't there?
I have a story for that.
Yeah.
I have a story for that. And I look for the silver lining, because as my grandmother was on the verge of passing, my mother was there, and I was trying to make my way there before she passed, down to my aunt's. She was 89, 90, and she was at my aunt's house, my mom's youngest sister. I was making my way down there to hopefully see her before she passed, and so on and so forth. But my mother was telling me the story that she was in there talking with my grandmother, and they were just, there wasn't anything else that could be done for her other than ease her pain. And so she was in there talking with her and everything. And my younger brother went in there and, was talking with my grandmother, visiting and everything else. And then shortly, as my brother leaves the room, my grandmother asks my mom, says, who's that little girl following my younger brother? Who's that following him? And my mom goes, who are you talking about? She goes, no, there was a girl. She goes, and my mother said, it must have been so-and-so, referencing one of my other cousins' little kids and so on and so forth. My grandmother goes, no, it wasn't any of them. Who was that girl following? And so needless to say that kind of stayed that way. And so whenever my mother first told me this story, years later, my brother adopted this, my brother and my sister-in-law, since my niece and nephew are all grown up, well, they adopted 2 more kids and they're little bitty. They started over, right? And so whenever my brother adopted my niece, Carly, well, my mother told me the story after the fact, after all this. I didn't know this, I didn't know the story and all this. So when my mother told me the story, I said, Grandma saw Carly before she came to be in the physical realm. She saw her.
Yeah.
I said, that's what I think. So my mother kind of looks at me like, well, there's a possibility. I said, no, I firmly believe that's who it was that was following him.
Well, I think sometimes too, when parents can take consolation in this too, like when they lose a child, another child will be born shortly after that. Mm-hmm. That's that child.
Yeah. And my brother and my sister-in-law have had, they had Carly since she was teeny tiny. And then of course, my nephew, Carson, he came along afterwards too. So, but I definitely, that's one of those moments. That's why I said, wow, it was really interesting.
I used to tease you, Anthony, that you had a twin that you killed in the womb. He would get really mad when I would say that. Do you have survivor's guilt for that?
Oh, gosh.
I'm just messing with you. So, Lura, this has been an enlightening conversation, and we've hit 3 hours.
Wow.
I mean, so.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Feel free to edit anything that's uninteresting that I say out.
Oh, no. Maybe what we babbled on about, but not you. So we're going to cut it out. We're going to sorry, I got to cut out because I am out of it. But.
Okay. Could I ask the viewers to go to my website? Is that
yes,
absolutely.
Oh, yes.
Plug away.
Shameless plug right now. Shameful plug, whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
Do it up.
If you want to learn about near-death experience, I've written a romance, paranormal romance series, wrapped in a murder mystery with characters who've had near-death experiences and return with psychic gifts. So it's action-packed and a lot of fast drama. It's called The Near-Death Saga. And the first book is Near Death Connection. The second is Throwaway Horses, and then Reincarnation Connection. And it's not a chick book. It's for adults and people that are really interested in the paranormal, because I really do a lot of explanation of what has happened to me, what have I experienced and learned, and I fictionalize it and put it in stories. So thank you for having me on your show and plugging my book series. It's very much appreciated. It has been a joy to be on your show.
Oh, and absolutely. And you know what? That was my big worry, that it was a chick book. I was like, this better not be a chick book. Oh my gosh. I was freaking out about that. I told Sal before the show. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
No, I find
I'm messing with you, Lura.
I find this topic, especially, coming from someone like you, I find this topic, even more interesting now, because you've actually had it, you've written books, and you've really explained it all. And I hope you can come back to visit us again and have another interview, because I think there's a lot more. I think we could, if we were sitting in the same living room right at this moment, I think we would probably be carrying on with this conversation for another 3 or 4 hours quite easily.
We leave some meat on the bone there. Absolutely. Believe me, we always do that with our shows. So
yes,
we try to keep them down to about an hour. So that's why folks are like, you need to make them longer. You need to make them longer. Mm-hmm. But it's proven that people's attention spans tend to go
about 50 minutes to an hour.
50 minutes to an hour, and that's it. And then, we also have to pay libs for the pleasure to have more time. And so people keep asking us why our shows are shorter. Well, we try to keep it within our budget. But if anybody out there wants to support us so me and Sal don't ever have to do anything but do this again, we'd be more than happy to do this the rest of our lives for you. But
it is. But all in all, thank you so much for being with us, Lura.
Yes.
Well, thank you for having me, guys. You guys have a great rest of the evening, okay?
Yeah, Lura, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye.